New to Mastercam 2022 is a toolpath that I'm very excited to introduce to you. It's called the Unified Multi-Axis Toolpath. You'll find it right up here, or of course in the right-click menu of the Ops Manager. What this toolpath does is consolidate all of the various options that we had for kind of free-form toolpath creation, such as parallel, morph, a long curve, project curves, and add some new functionality as well, such as flow, a geodesic algorithm, and we could leverage the geodesic with infinite number of input chains or just automatically resolving the boundaries, all sorts of cool things. Now, just a little disclaimer before we dig in here too deep. In order to keep this at a reasonable length, I'm not going to dig into every single button and switch. I'm just going to do a good overview of the toolpath. Expect some follow-up videos that really explain the difference. For example, if you're not sure what geodesic means or how it applies to you in real life, I'll be doing some in-depth videos that kind of guide you to when you would choose that strategy. So with that said, let's dig in and check out the new Unified Multi-Axis Toolpath. I'm going to launch it up here. Now when you launch this, you're going to notice it doesn't really look that different. I'm just going to choose, I just have a ball end mill here, a 6 mil ball end mill. I have a holder defined. All this is normal. Stock page is the same as all the others that you're used to. Cut pattern is where it starts to get interesting. You're going to notice the top half here is pretty different than what you've seen before, but the bottom half should be pretty familiar, all this area down here. So let's take a look at what this new interactive grid kind of gives you. You're going to see some buttons along here that let you choose various types of input. Now, automatic will take the area that you've selected and try to figure out the toolpath that fits over it well. Curves gives you the ability to, say, morph between two curves or to be parallel to a curve. Surface is going to be the same thing. You can morph between two surfaces. You can be parallel to a surface. You could flow a surface. And then finally you have planes, which is like the old parallel where you could choose, say, to do a constant Z step or align to XY or put in some rotation. And we'll dig into all that. Everything else down here is exactly as it was before. Here's where we choose the machining geometry and, cut tolerance, max step over. So let's see what automatic does. When you choose an option down here, it's going to update what you can do and what's available to it. So in the case of automatic, you cannot choose automatic and something else. If you choose automatic, we have to go with what we've got. Now looking at our grid here, automatic gives us some options under style. So you see we've got parallel, morph, between machining boundary, surface boundary, and then we can do a center parallel or center morph. And what these are doing is taking whatever geometry you've selected, and I haven't selected any yet, but it's going to apply a strategy that fits that. So let's take a look. I'm just going to leave it on the very first option here, and we're just going to try something to kind of see where it goes. I'm going to choose machining geometry here, and let's do this pocket. That's a kind of interesting pocket, so we'll just do that one. Now, I want to introduce you to another multi-axis option that's added for 2022, which is the toolpath preview functionality. We can now generate a toolpath without ever leaving the dialog. Very cool. Just like all the times when I'm previewing and teaching these things, I'm going to loosen up the tolerance a little bit to see if my cut pattern's what I want, and maybe do a 2 millimeter step over. So just kind of loosen it up a little bit so it doesn't take as long to generate while you guys are watching. So let's hit Preview Toolpath right up here. Okay, and there we go. We can see what it generated. I'm just going to slide my dialog over here a little bit. So what we could see from this is that we did a machining boundary parallel. So it shows the boundary of our geometry that we selected and did a collapse pattern from the inside to outside. Let's choose something else that will do something interesting here. Maybe center parallel. So what that's going to do is try to find the midpoint of your geometry and then radiate in or out from the center. Now, like I said, there's a lot of really cool options and things we could do to clean up these edges. I'll dig into that kind of stuff in another video. But let's take a look at some other options here. So I'm going to delete this row. I could either hit up here to delete just this one row, or I could hit this button to remove all rows. Of course, I only have one, so it's, doesn't really matter how I do it. But let's say that you wanted to morph from here to here. I'd say the best way to do that would be with some chains. So let's add a curve. Now, I've added a curve, and you could see that I've got a lot of different options here, but morph is not one. That's because you need more than one object to morph. We have parallel, perpendicular, project, or guide. So if I choose parallel, you see I have 0 entities, and I have to choose what I want to be parallel to. So let's just choose this one individual chain right there. Again, I'm going to use Preview Toolpath to see what we get. Okay, that's pretty much exactly what you would expect if you had gone up here and chose to make a parallel toolpath. Now, some other options we could see, like what would guide look like, for example. You notice guide is basically, it's a geodesic parallel, but you see that for practical purposes on a flattish surface like this, it doesn't really matter too much. We could do perpendicular. So that's going to be perpendicular to your selected chain. This was also known as the cuts along curve toolpath. And we could project, which would just trace that line. But notice here we could also add another option, another curve, and when you do that, now you can morph between them. So when you do morph, you can no longer add more, but if you had left it on guide, you could add as many as you want. So I'm just going to choose morph for now. I'm going to choose a second chain over here. We'll say morph from there to there. Green check. Let's preview that. And there you go. You see now we're blending between those two. Instead of, if you remember with the parallel, it was kind of offsetting here and running off to the edge here. Now it's, of course, morphing nicely between them. Some other options we could do. I'm just going to delete all options here. Let's check out surface. With surface, when you have one group, you can do parallel, guide, flow. So let's see what flow looks like. Now with flow, you can't select any entities. It's just using your machining geometry. This one's probably going to be pretty boring. Fair warning, this is not an exciting surface to do a flow on. Sorry. So, you could be parallel to one, in which case you would say I'd want to be parallel to that right there. So you're now parallel just like as if you had chosen a chain. And of course you could morph. And then your other option in here is to do automatic. With plane, you have the option of doing WCSZ, WCSXY, construction plane. We broke these all out. You could do an alignment to a solid face. You could just choose a plane from the planes dialog, or you could do a custom angle. So let's say, for example, this one we want to do WCSXY. Again, there's no real option to choose here. But you see here, this is now lined up perfectly to whatever WCS I'm in, which this should be top because I haven't changed anything yet, but perfectly lined up to there. So let's say I want to do this big front face. Well, let's clear my geometry selection, choose this front face, and now I'm going to say WCSZ. So there you go. Now, of course, we don't have our linking settings set up so it's retracting over that gap or whatever, but you can see that's a constant Z. Now, let's say that you want to machine this front face and you want to be parallel to this that bottom ridge. So let's see, change this, go here to curve and say I would like to be parallel to this shape right here, maybe that guy. Okay. And for this, I'm going to increase my step over just a little bit because that was kind of hard to see. So one thing that's pretty fun here is because I'm using the advanced toolpath display, these rapids are kind of in my way right now, and I'd really prefer not to see them. So remember that you can come up to your view option while we're in the dialog. This is now modal, which means we can edit, we could interact with Mastercam while this dialog's up. come over to our advanced display and turn off that rapid motion, because I just don't want to see that. It's not helping me out here. So let's take a look at what we got here with parallel. And you can see with parallel, we're not getting exactly what we'd want. You'd kind of want to morph there probably, but you get the idea. So everything else about this toolpath is exactly the same as all the other ones that I'd previously mentioned. Your tool axis control is going to be the same, collision control, linking, all of these are the same as the toolpaths that you know and love already. The idea here is giving you the option to just very quickly try strategies, see what fits, see how you could get the exact toolpath that you want. Like I said, I will be digging into some very fine differences between, say, a geodesic and the older, like morph parallel examples. They're called surface-based. And we'll be digging into what each of the options really do for us with some more complex examples in a future video. Thanks for watching.